Hello, everybody. Hello, welcome to a special podcast today. Although we are streaming on Capital Gains Tax Solutions, the next CRE Secrets podcast and YouTube channel, we are here today to raise some awareness and make an impact. Part of what we believe here at Capital Gains Tax Solutions is making an impact with the gifts and talents we've been given and spreading awareness to help those most in need. And so today, I'm ecstatic about our guest. He is my pastor from a very young age. In fact, youth group since I thought seventh grade when they snuck me into the ninth grade. I had cousins and brothers that were older than me. He's been a mentor. He's been a friend a long time. Basically, he's just like a part of the family for a lot of my friends and my family. And so I want you to welcome with me, Pastor Dan Palmer. How are you doing, Dan?
Hey, I'm doing great. First of all, Brett, thanks for introducing me to your friends. It's funny, the history we have. I was thinking about it as I was preparing for this podcast, just thinking about when you were in seventh grade. Yeah, we did act like you were older, but that's because you could play ball like you were older. So you were automatically in. But I just remember when we were young, I was working like 80-hour weeks as a youth pastor, making about $36,000 a year. And you guys were in high school and had nothing. And we would talk about the impact we were going to make. And we had nothing to do it then, but now we're grown. And it's just such an honor to me that now that you're grown, you're making an impact in the world, but you haven't forgotten taking care of people in need. And we're doing it. And a lot of the wells that the people are going to hear about are because a lot of people that grew up and they had this dream about, man, one day when I have things, I'm going to use it to build the kingdom and to make a difference in the lives of other people. Now they're there. And they didn't forget that dream when they were kids. And we're making a huge difference in Uganda, literally saving lives, bringing them to the gospel. And it's literally like an Old Testament Bible miracle what God's done there.
Amazing. We're going to dive all into that. And that's the topic at hand. It's just Water of Jesus Wells. And we're going to talk about the story behind this, the vision behind this, and the opportunity for you to make an impact. This is something that I fully support. And I actually financially, prayerfully, and also too, to that point, Dan, growing up, people may not know my story, but part of my story is, parents were divorced at a young age, and my mom didn't have much of any money. And without my grandma, we wouldn't have had a car, and the Lord always provided. My dad had a lot of money, and I'd go there and be spoiled and stuff, and it was cool, but he didn't really pay a lot of child support, and that was tough. But love my dad, love my mom. The Lord gave me a lot of people in my life, like yourself, that were like a second dad, right? And
thank you.
And coaches and sports and without all of that, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. So I want to thank you as well. That being said, Dan, would you give people a little bit more about your story, right? Before we dive into the Water of Jesus Wells, a little bit more about your story and background, and then we'll weave in how to get started here with Water of Jesus Wells. Okay, go.
Well, I'm getting kind of old, so my story can be a long one, but let me just give you the short version. I grew up similar to you. I was third born. I have two older brothers. And when I was about 6 years old, my grandpa came into my room in the middle of the night and said, "Hey, your dad's made some bad decisions and you may or may not see him again." And I was just devastated. And I remember what I went through as I entered into junior high. And I kind of, said, God let me down. God wasn't there. I went to Sunday school. I did the flannel board Jesus. I had the checks after my name. He should have taken care of me. How could this happen to my family? And I took it out on God. I felt like he had abandoned me, but really God was putting a fire in my heart to make an impact on people like me. And your listeners might be ashamed of their story or have things in their story that they don't like to talk about because they're painful. But I just want to tell them today, the area of deepest woundedness in your life is the place where you will make the biggest impact because it is authentic. And I learned as a young person, as I started doing ministry, I said, God, I'm going to be honest about my story. And I would share about what I went through. And there was so many other young people that would say, I thought I was the only one that felt this way. And I was able to speak right in. But Brett, I was a very positive, outgoing, happy, joyful person. And so God just has blessed me in so many ways, whether it was going to the small church that we were a part of that had about 200 adults. And all of a sudden we had, 100 high schoolers and 80 middle schoolers, and our youth group was almost as big as the entire church, or doing a worship service like Celebration for College and Career that ballooned 1,000 people. And we just got to see people worshiping and going all over the world with the good news. And it was happy news of the gospel. So for me, the Water of Jesus Wells just came out of me growing up in a difficult circumstance and always having people that rallied around me to help me. I was never self-sufficient. I needed people to help me. And I even went on a father-son trip with some of my buddies, and they knew I didn't have a dad in my life, which I think is the biggest disadvantage of all. It crosses racial barriers, wealth barriers. If you're growing up in a broken home, you have a severe disadvantage about how to live, how to deal with people. And I went on this camping trip, and at the end of the week, the dads pulled me aside and they said, "Hey, we've just been watching you, and you're charismatic and joyful and smart. And if you really were willing to work hard, you could do something special with your life." And you know what my response was, Brett? I said, "Did you really think so?" I never had an adult man look me in the eye and say, "You have what it takes." Not once in my entire life. And it just woke me up. And I was doing bad in school then. I was kind of acting out. I decided, hey, if I'm cool and people think I'm funny, that's going to get me where I want to go. And I just buckled down on my school and paid my way through UCLA, chose to go into ministry. And then, God has just done so many amazing things through me. And so Water of Jesus Wells is one of my favorite things because it literally saves lives. Number two, it's led to a revival through this entire Muslim dominated area where I have personally baptized over 400 Ugandans in the Nile. People think, oh, people need water. It's just water. No, it's the gospel in action. When people don't have daily necessities and you bring it, it literally changes the way they view the entire world. And, for me, I had armed guards when I first went because as a Christian white guy, I stuck out like a sore thumb, and a lot of people were not happy that I was there. We installed the very first well and the guards went away, and I said, "Hey, am I safe?" And they said, "We're in an honor culture. Now that you've done good to our community, if anyone was to do anything to you, there would be great shame on them and it would be community justice. And so you don't need to be protected. You are family now. What you have done for us, we can never repay." And I'll just never forget that impact. And then you say, the reason I'm doing it, it's not water of Dan Palmer wells. It's the Water of Jesus wells. God has ordained for me as his messenger to be here in this moment to give you this incredible gift for you and your kids. And it's because he sees you and he loves you and he hasn't forgotten you and he's here in your moment of need. And they see firsthand the greatness of God in their life.
Absolutely amazing. Dan Palmer. And if you want to take action right now, you can actually just message me or Dan, and we'll tell you about how to give. It's an opportunity to be a part of something that's more than just water, although it is absolutely water. It's changing communities, it's changing lives, and it's an opportunity to share the gospel. And so if you're a believer, if you're not a believer, we also encourage you to jump in with the fight for helping people to get clean water. And if you're a believer in particular, fight the opportunity to share the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ. So Dan Palmer, all right, so this Water of Jesus Wells. So let's talk about the origin of this, right? So you talked about a little bit how you got in and the challenge there, but talk about before this, right? Because you're working as a youth pastor. You're also working for Youth for Christ, inner city in Sacramento, right? You're doing a ton of work there, and now all of a sudden there's an opportunity that opened up, and you take a step of faith, right, to move towards this. So talk about a little bit of that transition, so people can get kind of feel for how this all came about.
Yeah, this is like a miracle. It's like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fire furnace. It's like Jonah with the great fish. I mean, it's like this incredible thing that God did. And what happened, it was about 2005. It was after I was your youth pastor. I was the college pastor at my home church, running a huge college group and worship service for college and career age people. And I was in charge of missions. And I actually went to Uganda. I think it was about 2005. And while we were there, I watched two borehole wells be dug. I didn't know I was going to see that there. I was just there to do VBS with the kids and to lead this group of 12 college students on a life-changing mission. But I watched these wells get dug by hand, and then they brick it, they concrete it, and then they put the apparatus in, and literally fresh water comes out. I mean, you've never seen people drink out of a grayish green puddle that cows are drinking out of, and then they're drinking out of, and then all of a sudden they see this crystal clear water come out of a well, and they start singing and dancing and celebrating because they can't believe it. They've never seen that. And so that was my experience. I met this man named Peter, and he was standing with me. He was one of the workers. And I said, "Did you get a well like this in your village?" And he said, "Yeah, I did 5 years ago." I said, "What happened?" And he started like this. He said, "We were 7. My family had 7 children, but only my sister and I made it past the age of 3. He said, "Every week someone would die in our village. We did funerals constantly, and then the well went in." He said, "And then people stopped dying, but people were still sick." He said, "And then 6 months later, people weren't even sick anymore." He said, "I looked at my sister and I said, 'Do you think it's the water?' They didn't even know." And I was just blown away. I couldn't even, I mean, we just turn on a faucet, right? Some of us won't even drink out of our faucet. We only drink water bottles, and we pay extra money to get, fresher water. And I was shocked. I said, "Peter, how much do these wells cost?" And back then, this was probably 2005. He said, probably $4,000 total for the entire well. And I was like, I'm a youth pastor making absolutely nothing. But I know some people. I bet you I could go back to America and just talk to some people and raise money to do a well. And so I kind of established in my heart, I'm going to do that. And I went home. My oldest son, Caleb, was already born. Tyler was born right afterwards. And you know how crazy, you of all people, Brett, know about having a lot of little kids. And I just never did it. I kind of blew it. I had this opportunity and I bypassed it. About 10 years went by. Now my kids are older. They're playing Little League and doing all kinds of stuff. And I was preaching in my local church, and I was doing a message on discipleship, and I was talking about this story in Uganda as a self-deprecating message. So I was talking about discipleship, and I said, this is how God works in your life. He gives you an innate passion. He gives you this passion that's built into you because you're created in the image of God. And then he gives you an experience that brings that passion to life. You might not have even known that passion was there, but you have this experience and it fans that spark into a flame. And now you're excited. This passion comes to life. And then, so the passion and then the experience and then an opportunity comes. And that's the moment of choice for us as people. The opportunity comes in an area where we've had an experience that's lit our passion into a flame. And we have 2 choices. We can say yes or no. And if we say no, what ends up happening is God seems very distant. Our prayer life becomes very weak. We feel that our faith is stale, that maybe God has abandoned us. And it's because we're in our comfort zone. But we also can say yes. And when we say yes, he takes us on this journey of something bigger than us, where we have to trust him. It drives us to our knees in prayer. He shows up in ways that we never could imagine, and it builds our trust in him. So I'm preaching this message on that, and I talk about Uganda, and I say, hey, I had this experience. I could have went. God could have did something amazing to save lives, but I was busy. I had kids. I said no. And I'm not responsible for any of the people that died because I didn't do those wells. But man, I missed out on God doing something incredible in my life. That was on a Sunday. Tuesday, one of the college students from 10 years before that went on that trip, who didn't attend my church, since then he had become a professor at William Jessup University. He calls me and he says, hey, you might not know this, but I've been going to Uganda every year since you took me. It was just been a passion for me. And I've always done the regular building project, VBS, but now I'm a professor and I want to talk to pastors and men about being an authentic biblical man who takes care of their family and takes responsibility for their life. Would you consider coming with me? And I was like, did you hear my message? I just talked about this. He's like, no, I didn't hear your message. I said, I literally just talked about this and about how I said no. And I said, this is a crazy thing, but I'll tell you what, talk to your contact. If he's able to do wells, I'll consider it, because I literally feel convicted. I just preached on this. So he calls me back the next day and he's like, you're not even going to believe this, but the local well maker for the Kamuli district in Uganda attends this guy's church. And he said he'll do it for the Uganda price if you're willing to come. And now I feel like I have to do something. So I did what no one should ever do. I started bartering with God. Okay, God, I'm really busy. I got 2 kids. I'm the coach of the Little League team. I'm a pastor at this church. I do not have time to travel to Uganda and do these wells. But I'll tell you what, I think it probably is going to be about $12,000 for me to get there, do 2 wells, and I'm going to make a list of 12 people. And I'm just going to call these people. And if you provide $12,000, I'm going to take that as a sign that you want me to go. And if you don't provide it, I'm going to take that as permission not to go. So this is my prayer. And so Saturday morning, so I preached on Sunday. The guy called me on Tuesday. Wednesday, he said, the well guy's there. We can do it. Saturday, I have my list of 12 people, childhood friends, people that had been in my ministry, guys like you, Brett. I get on the phone. I get through 6 calls. I have $18,000 already. Now, for people that are listening and that are really wealthy might say, oh, what's the big deal? $18,000. For me as a pastor making like $42,000 at that point a year, that was like unbelievable. That was like 6 months wages that came in 2 hours of phone conversations. These people were like, we're in. That is like so exciting. So I went, I did the wells. I came back. I told a couple of my buddies, you got to go with me. We went back, we did 3 more. I'm flying back. One of my buddies he was a high school leader when I spoke on Catalina Island. He texts me and he's like, I just saw what you did. I want my church in Colorado to be involved. Can I meet you there? I said, I'll meet you in Dubai. They come, we do 9 more. Next thing we know, churches are like, hey, there's a lot of need there. Can we build a school? So we build a school. So we have a school that has over 400 orphans of people that have died of AIDS or waterborne disease. Then I go back and the imam of the mosque comes to us and he says, I want to give my life to Jesus. And we go, why? He goes, I hated that you came. I hated that you came. I hated that you put this well in my village and it said water of Jesus well. And then he paused and he goes, but I need water. So every day when I get water, I have to accept the fact that Jesus gave this water to me. And one of the special things about water of Jesus well is the Muslim wells are only for Muslims. But when I put these wells and I dedicate them, the first question I ask is, who here has lost a child to waterborne disease? Every mom raises their hand, every single one, every time. That's how prevalent the death of these young kids drinking groundwater is. Second thing I say is, this is a gift from God to you. Not if you're a Christian, not if your life is all together. This is a gift from God. He causes the sun to rise on the righteous and the wicked. He loves you. Time is short, but this is the day of salvation. You can receive this gift from him. And guess what? He has greater gifts for you if you're willing. He wants to know you and have a relationship with you. And it just transformed that whole area. Like I said, 400 Ugandans baptized in the Nile, which is insane. I had no intention that was going to happen, and it just did. So that's a little bit of the background. It literally has been an Old Testament miracle.
Absolutely amazing. And I took some massive notes here, and I want to pull out some nuggets. So I love how you said passion, experience, opportunity. Right? Like we've been given gifts, we've given passions. We believe if you're believers from the Lord, He's instilled these things inside of us to have some kind of for justice, for giving, for helping others, right? And that's a good thing, but it doesn't stop there. Then there's experiences that you go through, and those experiences, by the way, can help to put yourself in a position to bless others with those experiences. All of a sudden, you have a unique skill set that's been developed through forging of experiences, and or an experience where you get to see the opportunity for this thing to come to life. It gets fueled, right? All of a sudden, that passion starts to grow into like a fire, like you said. But then there's a time when there's an opportunity now. Now it's like, are you going to take a step of faith? And then it goes yes or no at that point. It's kind of a fork in the road, and no leads to typically comfort zone. Like, the excuses, like you said, I had the 2 kids, and I'm a pastor, and I'm a baseball coach, and I leave my family and flying to Africa, and all the things that our mind takes us back to, the fears, right? The uncertainty, the anxiousness. Or you say yes, and it's an unbelievable journey, right? Of faith and dependence on the Lord. You have a chance to grow your character, to grow the difference and make an impact, to step into something bigger. I love the way you said that. And that helps to build trust in him for the next big journey.
Yes.
And also helps the Lord to build trust in us, right? That he can trust us with more because we were faithful with this calling. And so any thoughts on that, Dan? Did I catch that pretty good?
You did. That is unbelievable. Yeah, I look at it, and there's another aspect to it that I think is really important. We live in a world that's very divided, that's very dark, and people seem to lack hope in the future. And when we step out in faith, the supernatural God that has more power than us still does miracles. He's the same God as all those Bible stories you heard as a kid. And when he shows up, it reminds you of the end of the story. We might be in a dark chapter, but guess what? At the end, there's glory, and there's worship, and there's hope, and there's love, and there's life, and there's peace, and there's purpose. And so for me, that brings that to life, where I look at some of the things that seem unchangeable to me, and I just go, they're not with God. And all I have to do is be faithful. I'm not the one that's going to make this happen. I'm just the one, the instrument that he's going to use to do something special. And if I say no, I miss that opportunity, he'll just slide someone else in, and they'll have that incredible experience. But if I say yes, I get a front row view to God doing an amazing thing.
Absolutely incredible. And I can speak for my family, for my friends, for my entire history, that everything Dan is saying is straight from his heart and straight from taking action. And like he even said before, there's times when he didn't take action. There's times when we don't take action, right? But this is an opportunity to take action, right? And that's the beautiful part of this, that you are physically going there with teams now, and you're leading the charge to build all these wells. So give us some of the stats, Dan. How many total wells to date so far? What's it? Yeah. I'll break that down, right? What's the breakdown? How maybe you innovated the process and the efficiency of this, and how is it growing? What's kind of the latest right now? And then we'll kind of give a call to action.
Yeah, each well probably serves about 200 families. And when I say it serves 200 families, it means they take a jerry can and they walk up to a mile to fill their jerry can up and then put it on their head and walk back. And a lot of times you'll see a kid that weighs like 40, 50 pounds, and they got this huge yellow jerry can on their head, walking it back to their home. But before this fresh water, they were drinking out of puddles on the ground. If you can imagine that. And Uganda, people think of Africa, a lot of times they think of desert, but Uganda is called the Pearl of Africa. It's very humid. It rains almost every day a little bit, and then it's like 100 and something degrees, kind of like Florida or whatever. So you get like a downpour, and then it's just blazing hot. But everything's wet from the humidity, so everything's green and beautiful. I mean, it is a beautiful place. And so you basically have all of this beauty all around, and yet people are living in squalor. I mean, I'm not even kidding. Like, branches folded next to each other, and then clay smeared over it, and an open fire. The first time I went to Uganda, I kept seeing all these kids with big burn marks on their chest or their back. And I was like, man, is this some kind of terrible punishment that they do in their in their community? And I found out it's because they have to make fires on the dirt floor of their huts to cook their food or to boil their waters. And so when their kids are toddlers, they're toddling around that little space, and invariable at some point they fall onto the fire. And that's what all those burn marks were. But I just share that story to say, like, you can't fathom as an American what these people need. And so when people fund this, I get to be the boots on the ground, but I always tell people, God's given us all gifts. We do it together. If you're funding it and I'm the one that goes, we are a partner. We are partners. We are a team going to make a difference. I can't do it without you. You can't do it without me, but together we can do this incredible thing. So we've done 34 wells. 4 of them are in process. 34 wells. We have a school that has close to 400 students on it. We've done women's conferences. They just had a women's conference that the church put on. I do the wells. The churches are doing these other activities, so I'm not trying to steal their glory. But there was over 2,500 women that came to this thing. It's just unbelievable, like just out into the middle of a soccer field, just thousands of people there to hear the gospel. We baptized hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in the Nile. A church started. The first time I was there, I preached in the local church. It was 4 sticks in the ground and a blue tarp over it. And I preached there, and now it's a double-decker church, stacked, filled with people. And so, I just tell people the wells, it's the gospel in action. People say, hey, God loves you, but they don't feel loved because they don't have the basic necessities of life. And we get to go there and say, hey, I'm just an instrument, but look at what God's doing for you. He hasn't forgotten you. He sees you. He cares about you. He cares about your children. If any of you viewing want to come, I would love for you to see, because it's made me love my kids even more. I take for granted what they have. I take for granted how easy it is for them just to open the fridge and pull out a gallon of milk and pour it in a cup, when so many of these other people actually don't even have water, much less milk. And so it's been an incredible journey. I think it's like an Old Testament Bible story. It has been so fun to watch that entire area transform. And then last time I was there, I heard the children singing at chapel in the morning at school. These kids that before, you live on family land. So when your parents die, which a generation of people have died from AIDS and a lack of fresh drinking water. And so these kids are still part of their families. So they become farmers on the field, but the family doesn't have money for their nephews and nieces to go to school. So these kids are instantly pulled out of school and they just become laborers who farm the ground, and then they trade it. And so when we go there and we make this difference, we provide this school where a lot of these kids get an opportunity that the kids that have their parents there have, which is to go to school and get some sort of an education so they can have a better job. So the impact is varied. It impacts every aspect of their life, and it really has been an incredible journey.
Wow, Dan, I can't think of a better cause at this point. There are a lot of great causes, but for everything you just said, then one of the top ones to give to, if not the top one to give to, with clean, fresh water and wells that you're putting in affecting 200 families per well, and helping people not have to walk entire miles and miles and miles and miles, water on their heads, and 34 wells so far, 400 students in a school, women conferences, everything that the momentum is building up. I've heard the idea that momentum is greater than the sum of all the leadership strategy and resources that you have, right? And so it sounds like you've built some momentum, and it's only just getting started, right? You've got the people on the ground, you've got the community rallying behind you, and you've got others that are also branching out and starting the women's conferences, right? And now it's a matter of just pouring fuel, in this scenario, money on this momentum. And, instead of 34 wells, go to 340 wells, right? So 340 wells
right.
would basically be, you said about 4,000 a well, right? So at 4,000 times 300, that would be about $1.2 million. So $1.2 million would basically build 300 wells. Did I do the math right on that?
Let me look it up. Math isn't necessarily my.
Yeah, it's 300, point. Right? Because it's 4,000 a well, right? I just did it.
Yep. Times 300. Yeah.
Yeah. So 1.2 million equals 300 wells. And so if you're listening to this and you want to be a part of this, even if it's $100 or if it's $4,000 or it's $40,000, whatever it is that you are feeling maybe encouraged or called to give, we encourage you to contact us right now. You can find me on Instagram, on Facebook. Just say, hey, I saw the Water of Jesus Wells with you and Dan. Love the opportunity to give, and we can talk about how to give and also get a tax deduction on this. We're here about tax flow, right? We want to make sure we're taking advantage of all the opportunities to also be good stewards with the tax laws that we've been given by being able to give and get a tax deduction on our tax returns. Dan, anything else to add before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I want to say one thing. You said, "Oh, you've done this and you've done that." I just tell you, in my years of ministry, I've seen a lot of people try to do a lot of different things, but like Scripture says, unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain who builds it. Blackaby, in his book Experiencing God, he said, "Do you want your life to matter? Find out where God is working and get involved there." And so when I think about this journey, this is, I try not to take any credit for it. This is a miracle. This is a movement of God. I didn't even want to go in the beginning. I preached a sermon and then he convicted me by giving me a call 2 days later where I was like, I can't blow it again. I literally just talked about this. I can't have any integrity if I don't go. And I still bartered with him and said, hey, you have to provide this or I'm not going to do it. And he did it. And he's just continued to do it and do it and do it. And so if you're out there saying, hey, I've been looking for something to be involved in that's a true movement of God, I would just tell you, God has been in this from the beginning. It has been a miraculous journey. There's so much more to do, and I would love to include you in it. You will be my partner, my partner in experiencing God do an incredible thing. Can't do it alone. And I welcome anybody to come because God's at work there. So Amazing. Thank you guys all for listening. And I'm passionate about this. I'm excited about it because I've got to see it firsthand. There's actually a 6-year-old now. And I found out on my 4th trip, they introduced me and they said, we want to introduce you to our son. Let me tell you what his name is. Prince Daniel Palmer Balabayakubo. Not just my first name, my last name is his middle name. And I was so honored by that, but it spoke to the fact that God had transformed their lives so much that they took a middle-aged white guy's name for their kid.
God bless you, Dan. Thank you so much. Everyone out there, again, if you are wanting to give and get involved, just contact me or Dan, Facebook or Instagram, or you can email me, Brett@capitalgainstaxsolutions.com, and we can talk about how to give. And thank you so much. And we appreciate it. Share this with someone it can be encouragement to, and go make an impact in the world. Today's the day. Take the action, seize the opportunity, and we will talk to everyone again real soon. We'll be coming back again with Dan on future updates of what's going on and also future opportunities to give. But give right now today. Thanks so much. Bye now.